Hello and welcome to a Talmud Israeli production. Today we'll review the highlights of this week's course of Daf Yomi study, Masechet Bava Metzia, pages 116 through 119, and Masechet Bava Batra, pages 2 through 4. 116. Habayit v'ha'aliyah. There's a two-story house, a lower story, which is the bayit, and the upper story, which is called the aliyah. Nifcheta ha'aliyah. What happens if the floor of the upper story collapsed in part? But the owner of the lower story, whose responsibility it is to fix the matter, because after all, it's his ceiling that caved in, that is now harming the ability of the upper tenant to live. He has a responsibility to fix it. What if he refuses? Well, the halacha is that the upper tenant is now given permission to live downstairs with his landlord until such time as the repairs are made. So the question then is, how much of a collapse has to have happened in order to activate this halacha, allowing the upper tenant to live downstairs with the landlord? Rav said ruba. It's got to be that the majority of the floor collapsed. That's a very tough standard. Not going to be very pleasant for the tenant if only 49% collapsed. Shmuel Amar Abba Tfachim, where Shmuel says no. Even if it's just 4 tfachim by 4 tfachim, then this rule kicks in. And why does Shmuel say what he says? Because in Adam dar chatzi lamata v'chatzi lamala, a person can't be expected, or it's unreasonable to ask from a person that they live partly here and partly there, meaning that their usable residential space would be divided spotty, a little bit here, a little bit there. Accordingly, if even more than 4 tfachim by 4 tfachim is unusable, the law is kicked in, he can live downstairs with the landlord. 117. HaKotel v'ha'ilan. If there's a wall or a tree, shenaflu reshut harabim, that fell into the public space, v'hiziko, and caused some damage, patum l'shalem, they are exempt from paying. The owner of the tree or the wall is exempt. Now this is only true if this was a totally unforeseen circumstance, where the tree or the wall was in sturdy condition. However, let's say the item in question was not in good condition, and in fact the authorities of the court had given the owner of this wall some time to tear it down, or the tree some time to chop it down, because there's an expectation that in the not too distant future this collapse could occur. Well, if the tree or the wall collapses within the allotted time frame, so that the owner had not done yet anything wrong, then he's still exempt. However, if the time for allotted by the court for the removal had already elapsed, and then the item fell, he's liable. He's got to pay for it. 118. If you hire some laborers to work on the straw, and the worker says, okay, day is over, give me my wages, I want my cash. And the employer says, you know what? Just take the straw you were working on and call it a day. I'm not gonna give you any money, but you'll get to keep what you worked on. Ein shaman lo. We don't listen to the employer. Rather, the employee has the right to insist upon cash payment. Mishakibel alav. However, if the employee accepted the remuneration in the form of the work product of the straw, and then later on, the employer says, you know what, actually, I want the stuff back, and I'm willing to pay you in cash your wages. Here's the money. Ain't shamimlo. We don't listen to the employer. Rather, he can't coerce his employee to give back the straw in exchange for cash. The employee now has full control of the situation. If he wants to keep the straw, he can. If he wants to exchange it for cash, he also can. But the ball's in his court. 119. There were two gardens, one on top of the other. And vegetation was emerging from the vertical wall separating the two terraced gardens. Rabbi Meir Omer Shel Elyon, Rabbi Yehuda Omer Shel Tachton. Rabbi Meir says the vegetation sprouting from the side on the vertical wall belongs to the upper garden, and Rabbi Yehuda says it belongs to the lower garden. Amar Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon says, "Kol she'en chalif shel yadav lital reza shelo ashashal tachton." So he said, Rabbi Shimon says, whatever the upper guy can grab from his vantage point belongs to him, and whatever he can't grab because it's too far of a reach belongs to the lower garden. And when this ruling was repeated to Shabar Malka, to King Shapur in Babylonia, because he was interested in Talmudic studies, he said, you know what? I like Rabbi Shimon's ruling on this. There should be more rabbis like Rabbi Shimon. Now we shift to Bava Batra, having finished Bava Metzia. Bava Batra, page 2. A person is forbidden to stand in somebody else's field and watch the growing grains in the hour when the grain is it's at its peak and standing in the field before it's been harvested. Why is this not kosher? Why should this not be done? Because of concerns of the evil eye, the ayin hara, which will be cast upon the field and therefore the owner of the field by a jealous neighbor, whoever it might be, who's gazing at the bounty. Page 3. Bamikdash Sheni, in the second temple, my Tamilovad Amatraxin. Why is it that there was no thick wall of an amma thick, separating the holy from the holy of holies, the Kodesh from the Kodesh HaKodashim? But rather there was a curtain, or some say two curtains, separated by a hollow, a gap area of an amma. And the answer is Kikai Betlatin Kai Tvelokoi. The second temple was taller, the structure was taller than was the first temple, and so a wall that was only an amma thick would be insufficiently thick and sturdy to remain erect at a height the size of the second temple. So, out of necessity, they had to replace the thick wall with two curtains because structurally it would have been infeasible to have a wall that high and yet that narrow. 4. Amri, Mishalo Rabin and Hudas Rabin Nami Amav. It is said by the Talmud that whoever did not see the second temple as it was reconstructed by Herod the Great. Herod was king of Judea from about 37 before the Common Era until about 4 before the Common Era, and he was not a very good man. He is viewed negatively by our tradition. However, the one good thing to his credit is that he engaged in a building enterprise and rebuilt the Second Temple to be a glorious structure. Whoever did not see that glorious structure has not seen a beautiful building in all of his days. Everyone have a great week.